Hello, welcome, and thanks for joining us today. We have a great panel for you on this opening session on leveraging new technologies to bring innovation to manufacturing. Today's sessions will all be recorded and all be available within a few short days on demand. Now, you've had 2 years to do this, but let's take a minute and familiarize yourself with the Zoom tool. Find the Q&A and the chat. At the end of this, we'll be taking questions and I'll be pulling them from the chat. So please leave your questions there. From Q&A. Chat is, you can tell us where you are, you can say how fabulous this is, but Q&A is where we want to see the questions. The track will run for 55 minutes and we'll let you out on time so you have plenty of time to find the link to the next one. Now, the company that's bringing together today's event is IIoTWorld. They are the leading authority on industrial IIoT. IIoTWorld is a digital media outlet bringing the largest industrial Internet of Things, virtual conferences, and content to almost 300,000 people around the globe. It wouldn't be possible to run this virtual conference or any of the others during the year without our sponsors. For today, thank you to Hitachi Vantara, HiveMQ, Siemens, Fortinet, Keyfactor, EMQ, K-Factory, Avasi MDT, Trend Micro, Faircom, Nozomi Networks, LIM CMMS, Adolis, and last but not least, Raven. Now let me quickly introduce our panelists for this important conversation. We have 3 guys spread around the world who are going to bring expertise to us in this first hour. Ravi Subramanian is from Chicago, talking to us from Montreal, Canada today. He's with HiveMQ. Ravi has over 20 years of industry experience working as a product leader in industries like enterprise two-way radios, automotive, fleet management, industrial automation, mining, oil and gas, and industrial motion control systems. Like me, it sounds like he can't keep a job, but the reality is we've gone out and seen a lot of different industries, and that brings value. Over the last 6 years, he's been involved with industrial IoT, Industry 4.0, and data analytics, where he drove value for customers in smart factories, predictive maintenance, supply chain optimization, and condition monitoring. Next, we have Adrian Dima, who is in Dusseldorf today, but tomorrow we'll be back in Setúbal, Portugal, one of my favorite coastal cities in the world. Adrian is the co-founder of K-Factory. He has over 4 years in manufacturing and 20 in enterprise IT, deploying projects and products for hundreds of customers of all sizes. K-Factory is a disruptive startup focused in improving operational processes for factory shop floors. He has experience in Industry 4.0 digital transformation strategies, software architecture, new technologies in manufacturing, IoT, and product development. And in his spare time, he co-authored the book, Reinventing Economies and Organizations Following a Global Health Crisis. Next, we have Mike Bowers. Mike normally hangs out in Sandy, Utah, just outside of Salt Lake City, but today he is coming to us from Barcelona, where he and his company are participating in a show there, and we're glad to have you step away to join us for this hour. Mike worked as an OT engineer for 15 years in the manufacturing industry. He worked at Mitsubishi Silicon America, he worked at Mitsubishi Silicon America, leading equipment integration efforts in agricultural manufacturing, designing and building large mobile robots that work in the field with minimal human supervision, and at Freightliner Truck. In addition, he's worked for 20 years as an IT software developer and data architect at a variety of both small and large firms. As chief architect for Faircom, Mike is currently leading the R&D team in designing Edge Hub and Edge MQ products for IoT. And lastly, your moderator, me, Becky Morgan. Following 14 years in industry, I founded my consulting business, Fulcrum Consulting Works Incorporated, 32 years ago. I work with leaders of closely held mid-sized manufacturing companies, generally between 100 million and $1 billion US, to build operational capabilities that provide competitive advantage in alignment with the business strategy. My latest book, Manufacturing Mastery: The Path to Building Successful and Enduring Manufacturing Businesses, was released by the publisher last September and is available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And a few lucky participants in today's sessions will receive free copies courtesy of IIoT World. Now you know a bit about us. We're apparently all old because we have a lot of experience, and we want to learn a bit about you, our live audience. We're going to take 2 quick polls to give us a sense of your thinking and where you are, and then we'll start the questions. Poll number 1 is up here now. Please respond, taking a single choice. The results will show here in just a second. So databases seems to be the winner, with other coming in pretty strong. So that's good information that helps us as we target our comments for you in the future. Thank you. Lucian, could you show us poll number 2 now? Okay, do we have enough responses now, Lucian? Well, these are just split up all over the place. What's interesting is that 7% of you at the bottom said we face no obstacles, we just move forward. That means 93 of you face some strong obstacles. The top one is important. The one about we don't understand the benefits, because why would you do something if you don't know why? And 23% of you said you just don't know why you would do it. Expense is another big one. And that's half of you either don't know why you would do it or you think it's going to take a lot of money. And then the next one is we don't know how to get started. We don't know how to define and implement a digital strategy. So that is really good information that we will keep in mind as we respond to you guys. Now let's turn to this panel we've assembled. It's a great group of guys with a lot of knowledge. Mike, let's start with you. They say that if you can't explain it to your mother, you don't truly understand it. So pretend I'm your mother. Tell me, what are the primary components of new technologies that bring innovation to manufacturing? And which is the one that you see that's least understood?
Yeah, I see there's some really obvious, well understood success factors like lowering cost, increasing reliability, improving performance, speeding the delivery of solutions. You know, everybody knows about those well understood factors. If you can be cheaper, more reliable, faster, and deliver solutions faster, then you'll be very successful. I think some less understood factors are how game-changing technologies really can completely reinvent something, because it's hard to predict what is game-changing until it's already happened. So it's hard to predict what the next game changer will be because they provide a new capability that no one ever thought of before. So by definition, you don't really know what's coming. And so that's really hard to understand what's going to change everything until a few people see success in a certain way, and then others just use it, and then it grows like a snowball. And so one of the things that I see coming up, for example, will be technologies, even old technologies or older technologies that haven't yet been adopted that can still be game changing because they can be adopted in new, refreshing ways. And I hope we talk about some of those technologies today, like MQTT and others that can really change the way you do things if you understand how they change them.
Thanks, Mike. And those changes are going to be reflected in the elements you talked about first, right? The cost reduction, those things. When I see a new technology, it's going to affect the things that I know about.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely can lower your cost. Well, sometimes it's all four of them: cost, reliability, performance, and faster delivery. Sometimes it's one or two of them. But yeah, a game changer can change all of those. And those when it gets really exciting, right? When you have something that can lower your cost, or increase your reliability and your performance and your delivery.
Okay, thanks, Mike, for those insights. Ravi, when it comes to on-premise factory equipment and software, so not in the cloud, the on-premise equipment and software, what are the ones that you encounter most frequently when you're out in the world? And which of those do you think is most important to innovation in manufacturing?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Yeah, it was interesting that the poll responses said it's mostly databases and MES systems. What I encounter is like a variety of places, and let me start with like the deepest area, which is the automation area, where you have the factory machines, right? These machines are the ones that are actually like doing the work, right? The robots, the lathe machines, the drilling machines, that are actually like generating a lot of the data. And then you have like a layer on top of it, like which basically can capture some of this information, like sensors, actuators, regulators that can capture this information. Then you have other devices like drives and motors. Then you get a little bit into like consolidation, like you have like programming logic controllers, for example, that can do some logic around these and manage these, how these machines perform, automate some of the jobs that these machines do without the human intervention. You have devices that consolidate the data, because a factory is very, very complex when it comes to different areas and different jobs that are done in the factory. So you need consolidation devices. Then when you get to the next layer, you have what we call human machine interface or SCADA systems, right? SCADA systems are, okay, if I'm an operator and I want to control and I want to see how the flow is happening with my process or with my factory and things like that, I need some kind of a visual tool. That's what the HMI and SCADA system is providing. People talked about MES systems, manufacturing execution systems, and these are kind of used to kind of like see some of your key performance indicators on your manufacturing floor. We talked about databases, important areas where data is stored. And then when we get to the next layer, that's kind of like where you are able to see more of like your entire factory system. You have your product line management systems, or OEE, which is overall equipment efficiency systems. You have like databases like SAP, ERP systems, as we call it. So there are all these different layers, right? And I think like really from an innovation perspective, what is important is that we're able to get data from all of these different locations. We're able to bring them together in a way that kind of like makes sense. And then you can take it and do things like artificial intelligence or machine learning or reporting to kind of like satisfy use cases that you have. I think Mike mentioned about cost reduction or being able to predict failure before it happens, and those use cases, right? Those are the things that you want to do, but you need a combination of all of this data, in my opinion.
Okay, so innovation isn't going to come from PLCs or from just automation. It comes from the information from all of those being brought together, so we can see that in new ways that we couldn't see when it's segmented.
Absolutely, absolutely. You got it right. That is absolutely right.
Thanks, Ravi. Adrian, how do you see the actual technology landscape in factories when you're out there? What do you see being leveraged for innovation, and what could be leveraged but doesn't seem to get the attention it deserves?
Well, actually, my answer came somehow to complete Ravi's response, because I'm seeing a pattern. I've witnessed during the years the transformation of the shop floor processes, in manufacturing companies, and there is a pattern. First of all, I call the pattern as the Excel loop. Basically, the first level where it's zero digitalization, no digital adoption of anything, and people are using paper and unstructured file like Excel. Even now, if you are looking at the studies made by Deloitte or other big companies, 70% of the processes into a manufacturing company are handled by paper and Excel. I think it's huge, in a bad way. And then companies are starting to adopt solutions. Usually they are starting with an ERP solution, then maintenance system, WMS system, and SCADA system, and then whatever. And then other systems are in place, but in a old way. By old way, I mean the fact that they are trying to cover one problem with one solution, other problem, other solution. And in the end, they are finding themselves in a position where they are having a lot of digital islands, not talking between each other. And if you're looking at managers, they cannot take any data-driven decisions. Why? Because they need data from different systems and nobody is there to compile it. And the solution, why it's an Excel loop, I'm seeing now companies, big companies, which are, they say they are heavily digitalized, they are having a lot of IT systems, and now they are hiring teams only to produce more Excel files. But now it's more and more expensive. Why? There are more people which are handling Excel files. There are more skills needed, because they need also to get data out of the IT systems, and more IT systems means more work, and that's why it's becoming more expensive. And a lot of companies are dragged into this Excel loop. We are talking about machine learning, artificial intelligence, but in reality, they are not there. Most of them, they are far from that point, and the pool indicates the fact that a major part of those companies, companies does not even from where to start a digital transformation process.
Yeah, well, and I think what you've described is why a transformation roadmap is so important, because that's the way you can build in integration thinking. But what I've found is a lot of people can't envision the future. They don't know when we're digitally transformed, or what that's going to look like. So they don't know how to plan to get there. So they just try different things and see what works. And at that point, once you've got a bunch of separate systems, then you have to go back and figure out how to integrate them. So the roadmap is really important. Lucian, we have one last poll for our audience, and this one is specifically about MQTT. Could you put that up, please? Okay, there's not many choices, so this one we may have responses quickly. So Lucian, how are we doing? And that's interesting, and I will say I'm not surprised. I think MQTT is something that is what I call lovingly geeks know about, but a lot of manufacturing operational people have no idea what that is. And there's a lot of them trying to still figure out what SCADA is, because these are technology terms, not manufacturing terms. Yet in manufacturing, we need to have people who understand a lot of these to do what is possible. So this is a really interesting result. I'm glad we did this. Thank you, Lucian. Mike, I guess a lot of us need to answer the basic. What is MQTT? And how does it help reinvent manufacturing for significant cost reductions or any of those other benefits that you mentioned early on?
I love this question because it isn't well known, and it was invented by IBM around 20 years ago, and it's been around a long time, but it has slowly become more and more adopted. And it's funny, at the current conference I'm at, we're talking, I gave a whole presentation on what is MQTT and how you can use it in manufacturing to improve your processes, reduce your costs. MQTT is like email for machines. You know, and email transformed the entire world, the internet, be able to send messages to people. And messaging is a critical part of communications because you can push information to somewhere. Well, MQTT allows a machine to push a message to another machine. And I learned about this kind of push messaging or message queue. So MQTT stands for Message Queue Telemetry Transport. So it's about transporting messages to a broker, which is a message queue that queues them up and delivers them to the targets that subscribe to the messages. I learned about this technique of message queuing when I was in the silicon industry. And the silicon industry has been using message queues from the very beginning, or at least long before I was hired there, and that was over 30 years ago. Intel started this, and Mitsubishi Silicon America continued. With all the major companies we work with use these message queues. Back then, they were proprietary products. They were not an industry standard like MQTT. The idea is a machine can send a message to a topic. A topic is like an email address. And then other machines can subscribe to the topic. And it's like a group email address, so that every message sent to the topic gets delivered to every single subscriber. So it's like group email, and it's very effective to change manufacturing because you can add new clients to publish messages at will, because any client can publish messages to any topic. You can add subscribers at will because any other client, like machine, can subscribe. For example, you can have robots, stampers, CNC machines, any kind of machine you can imagine on your manufacturing line, just join in and start publishing telemetry, which is data. It's just data, alerts, and publishing that information to topics. And then you can have any kind of software subscribe to those topics. And that way, if you want to add a new monitoring program, you just add a monitoring program, subscribe, and you get the information. You don't have to hardwire everything point to point. It's huge. It changed everything. And we were able to build factories really cheap in the silicon industry using this technique. But I worked in other factory scenarios where they hardwired everything. And then we had to pay, every time you hardwire one device to another device, you have to pay someone to do the integration. And then you change that, you have to pay someone to change it. It gets very expensive. So MQTT reduces costs by decoupling the senders from the receivers and allowing many senders to send to a topic and many receivers to subscribe to the same topic. And you can have as many topics as you want. And I have a whole 45-minute presentation on how you can really reinvent manufacturing using MQTT. So I can't go through that here, but it's actually real, and it's been really fun at this show. We had dozens of people we had over 50 people attend my presentation. We had dozens of people come back to our booth to see all this in action. And they go, yes, this is how we're doing it, or we want to do that. And they're really excited about reinventing their manufacturing using this industry standard. And that's what's so cool. MQTT is an industry standard. IBM has an MQTT broker. Faircom has an MQTT broker. There's lots of vendors who have MQTT brokers. We're compatible. We compete with each other, but we're also compatible. And we have different specialty features. Like Faircom has a database built right in to, because we're a database company. And so we automatically persist every single MQTT message and make it available through SQL and through REST, as well as MQTT. So now you can not only push data, but you can pull data and you can query data. And you need both because machine learning wants to query data. So converging those two has been really good for Faircom because we give you the push and the pull technology in one solution. So I think MQTT is a solution.
Thanks. I'm not a technical person. I think I understand fairly well what you just said, but I don't know what I would do with it as a non-technical person. Adrian, can you tell us a little bit, working on some of what Mike just said, what role can startups have in helping factories develop and implement a roadmap? And is MQTT part of a roadmap? Does it underlie? Is it assumed? Is it a choice? Help us.
It's an interesting technology. It's usable. It's having a lot of use cases, in a factory. But of course, there are different layers of types of solutions, and you cannot use MQTT for everything. It's not a solution for every problem that you are having in your factory. For example, we are more onto the business side, on the business processes side. We're trying to see, to have a bird's eye view over the processes into the show floor. And of course, startups, Key Factory and others can help a lot manufacturing companies into some areas where we think we are the best. First of all, it's about innovation. Yeah, doesn't matter if it's MQTT or other technology. We are always connected to the newest technologies, and we are able to help manufacturers to find ways to achieve their goals. Doesn't matter if it's to be more efficient, to produce more, or to reduce consumption or whatever. Basically, a startup is charting uncharted territories. So that's why we can round up corners, and to find ways not found by others to old problems which manufacturer has. Second, it's about interest. We are totally interested in having new customers, traction. Of course, each company is interested to get new customers, but a startup, it's having an accelerated growth. So that's why when a startup, for example, it's funded, it's raising some funds, the money is not especially a problem, but the traction is. So that's why customers which can test the technology, which can be early adopters, are the best customer for startups, and also they are having the most part of all the interest from the startup side. Probably we've all been customers, for in IT. Imagine telco companies, or utilities. I'm thinking only of staying at the phone or sending emails for days and nobody responds, or for hours at the phone. So basically, when you are working a startup, these things are not happening. Then it's about the quality of the startups. You are having a team, a highly qualified team, which is totally available for you. Of course, when that startup is becoming a big corporation, things are changing, of course. But in that moment, the quality of the support, it's the best. And least and not the last, any manufacturing company which is an early adopter, for the new technologies, can be for them a major differentiator on the market. All the competitors are using classic technology, so differences usually are made by fine lines. But when you are open enough to be an early adopter as a manufacturing company, you can create a lot of difference on your market, and you can be the leader, or if you are already the leader, you can put a lot of difference between you and your competitors just by using new technology. And this is happening only if you are working with startups.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, Adrian. I appreciate that. It's sometimes scary to work with a startup, but in many cases, startups are from people who left organizations that are kind of tied to the specific way or their own product. So sometimes startups give you a newer view. So it's kind of nerve-wracking for everybody, but there's some great intellectual capital there that should be leveraged.
Right.
And I want to remind all of our audience to please put your questions in the Q&A. We'll be starting Q&A in a few minutes. And there's only 2 questions so far, and these guys are great, but I can't imagine that they've answered every possible question that you have. So please remember to put those in the Q&A. Ravi, this is a tough one because we talk about all this data. We want all this data. We're going to do everything to change the world with all this data.
Mhm.
But most of us have ERP systems that have data that we don't trust.
Right.
So there's the whole question of how do we ensure that data is available reliably, it's good data, it's scalable, it's secure. Those are critical issues. And how does technology impact that? And what technology would you recommend to support all of that?
Right. So in the earlier question, we talked about like these different factory systems, right? Or the automation system or the database systems and things like that, right? So over time, and because of the fact that you have factories are so complex and it's very use case driven and it's very data siloed, people have adopted different protocols. Protocols are basically just a language, right? That you talk to that particular machine. For example, if it's like a stamping machine or an injection molding machine, it has a particular protocol. It has a particular way that you can talk to it to get the data, right? Over time, what's happened is that people have realized that, okay, we need to standardize, right? So that like there's a very common language. Like, for example, if I'm two separate devices talking to each other, if I have a common way to talk to each other, then it makes it much easier, right? Mike kind of alluded to MQTT as being one of those languages, and MQTT is very powerful. There are also other standardized protocols like OPC-UA, for example. There was a foundation that was created by the big OEM manufacturers of industrial products. And like OPC kind of like created this universal acceptance protocol, which is a client server model, if you will. I'm a client and I'm a server. I want to exchange information. HTTP, which is more of like a web, kind of like a URL. You go to your computer, you open a browser. Like typically it's HTTPS, right? So that's a protocol that's also being used very commonly. AMQP is another protocol. Again, you don't need to know what the acronym stands for, but it's just like another protocol that's used. Of these, like what I feel is that OPC-UA and MQTT have kind of like really gained a lot of popularity because of what they do, if you will, and a lot of the feature functionality that they provide to you. I think Mike already talked about like the benefits of MQTT, which I don't want to go over again because I think that's pretty obvious. I think like when it comes to data, right? I think like the question is like, how do you ensure that it's available in a reliable, scalable, and secure fashion, right? I think like you need some kind of a solution that's standardized, like an MQTT based broker, for example, right? Which HiveMQ offers a broker. But the key thing is like, for example, factory systems are all over the world, right? And you have data coming in from like different factories, which over time have like different formats and things like that. So you need to ensure that like, first of all, whatever solution you put in place is simple, right? It's not going to take like moving mountains to get the data out, right? It has to be simple. You put it in place, it works, right? Maybe you put a client, the client is able to get all the data from all of these different systems, and you put like this broker, boom, the broker is able to get the data and you're good to go. You need it to be scalable because obviously like depending on how many different data points you have across all of your different factories, you need your system to scale. Sometimes you have like millions of data points, right? You need a solution that's scalable. You need a solution that's reliable because obviously like you're talking about like factory systems that you want to be able to kind of trust the data, right? So reliability is key. Last but not least, security, right? I mean, we obviously like we are talking about OT systems that are very, very, very secretive about like their how they use those systems. So security is key, right? So all of these different factors need to come together, and you need a solution that can easily bring together all of this and offer that solution to customers. Is there one solution that can solve all of these problems? Probably not, but like people like HiveMQ and others have the solution that can solve a majority of those problems for customers.
Okay, so that's part of what we discussed earlier, that you need help getting that roadmap laid out.
Exactly.
Because there is too much for a single person to know.
Right, right.
That will optimize all these, and you might have different emphasis that you place on
Absolutely.
scalability or whatever.
Absolutely. And providers, just one last point, providers need to actually be able to interact with each other. It's not like, hey, we're a competitor, we don't want to work with you. For example, if you have an OPC-UA system, I have an MQTT system, for example, yes, we are competitors, but we also need to interoperate with each other because it's in the best interest of the factories, right? For us to be able to talk to each other and provide a system that is beneficial to the factories and the corporation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. And Mike, I'm going to ask you a quick question before we move on to the audience Q&A, because they have started putting those questions in and I want to get to them. The quick question is, most factories are brownfields. I still see manual lathes out there. So with MQTT or these other brand new technologies, how do you optimize a communication protocol?
Yeah, and how do you get all these legacy devices like PLCs to talk MQTT? And the good news is that we're working with, for example, right now, Faircom is working with one of the top 3 automobile manufacturers in the US. And they're completely redesigning their entire manufacturing line around MQTT and JSON messages over MQTT. Their big challenge is, and it's all about standardization. So I should say the reason they're doing this is to standardize everything. And because like Ravi said, when you have every machine talking a different protocol, using a different binary protocol to communicate, it's so expensive to integrate everything. If you can standardize on JSON over MQTT and standardize your JSON format, it's easy to troubleshoot, easy to manage, and you can do amazing things with it. So this company has thousands of PLCs of all flavors. A lot of them are Siemens, the majority are Siemens, but they have every flavor of PLC ever invented. And the nice thing about Siemens PLCs, for example, it has built into it the ability to send MQTT messages. The problem is it can't send JSON, and it can send, all it can do is send its binary data that it stores in its user-defined types. But Faircom has, for example, worked with them, and we can take the binary data, and our broker can automatically convert that binary data to JSON. So now you have standardization across the factory, because you can now communicate in JSON everywhere. And but you don't have to have Faircom MQ to do that. You can use, there are hardware devices you can plug in to protocols like Modbus and Profinet and they will convert the data flowing across the bus into MQTT messages to standardize, to get onto a standard. And if you can also ask a manufacturer, if they don't have MQTT, they can add it, because adding an MQTT client to a device is actually very simple. Even a small Arduino with 20 lines of C code, you can publish messages on an Arduino. And so we have our C developers have added those to devices so very quickly and easily. So it's easy to take, like you said, legacy or existing systems that you've millions of dollars invested in existing equipment, and ask the manufacturers to enhance it, or to use built-in features, or to use hardware devices, or ask software vendors like Faircom to create bridges from a legacy protocol to MQTT and JSON, so that you can get other things talking. Because once you get everything talking JSON over MQTT, then everything can communicate to everything very inexpensively. And that's the goal. And that's what that's what our customers are doing. And that's what I believe the future of manufacturing is. And that's what, by the way, that's what IT did. I had insight this morning. I was thinking about my days way back in the 1980s doing IT, and it reminded me, that's kind of like manufacturing today. I don't mean that manufacturing is backwards, but I mean that we had desktop PCs, we're trying to get them to communicate, to interoperate, and it was very challenging. But today, IT's matured, and I worked in both spaces, and IT is standardized with standard protocols. IT can get very productive in communications, and that's what IT is doing. And I see manufacturing doing the same thing, and I think it will reinvent manufacturing to move.
Okay, so having a bunch of old equipment is not an excuse to sit here and do nothing.
In fact, you shouldn't. You need to do something. You need machine learning.
Thanks. I want to turn to the audience Q&A now. Adrian, I'm going to ask you this question, and I don't know if this is your area of expertise or not, but somebody says, have you adopted Sparkplug-B specification? And I don't know if they mean like, do we have individual experience or what? Can you hit that one for us, Adrian?
No, straightforward answer is no. And honestly, there are, if I'm returning to my point earlier, there are a lot of layers, of technologies which can be used depending on your focus, So if you are going to hardware or directly to be connected with the machines, there are some protocols and some standards. If you are going on middleware level, you know, or there are other protocols. If you are more into security, for example, there are other protocols and other standards. And if you're going at the business level, again, another answer. So
you're telling me
Okay.
that Sparkplug-B is one of many, and you haven't particularly worked with it, but it's out there.
I can also take this, Rebecca, if that's okay with you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so Sparkplug-B is something that HiveMQ, for example, is betting a lot on. I think Michael mentioned about like different data formats, JSON, and just straight data formats that like maybe again you cannot make sense out of it unless you convert it to a certain format, right? One of the things that Sparkplug-B does, which by the way came from the inventors of MQTT, right? So they also invented Sparkplug on top of it because specifically for factory systems where you have a lot of these devices that are combined together, MQTT is still kind of a little it provides you with like individual pieces of information. There's no way to combine all of that and create a data model, right? That says that, okay, so I want to kind of like model my whole factory subsystem that consists of like machines and sub-machines. And this is kind of like how the data is formatted, right? Sparkplug-B is able to provide you with that data model that if another machine or other system can support that, can understand that immediately, right? It provides all the benefits of MQTT, but it also provides additional benefits. It tells you the birth and death, kind of like when did I start, or when was I born, right? Hey, I was born in this time, right? Like as a machine, I just came online at this time, and I'm going to be decommissioned at this time. Those kinds of messages, in addition to what MQTT does, the Sparkplug compatible machines can take benefit out of that, right? It can do store and forward, for example. If the connection is lost, Sparkplug-B allows you to do like a store and forward. It stores information and forwards it. So for those reasons, HiveMQ has like betted on Sparkplug, and we are compatible with Sparkplug-B.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And is a SCADA system still necessary with MQTT?
Oh yeah, MQTT itself is just a protocol to send messages around. It's not a visualization system, and it's not a control system. So you need software to control the messages that are being sent around. And to reinforce Ravi's point, Sparkplug-B is a good protocol, and all the advantages I agree with what Ravi's saying about it. And Sparkplug works over MQTT, so every MQTT broker can work with Sparkplug, like Darcom MQ does the same thing. The thing I don't like about Sparkplug, I mean, there's a lot of things I do like, so let's be clear about that. I do like a lot of things. I like the way they organize topics. I like how they have a standard data format, but I don't like that they use Google protocol buffers because it's binary and humans can't read it. But I do like the data structure they stick in the Google protocol format. That data model that they put in there is a nice generic data model. And that can also be done in JSON so you can use the same topic patterns in Sparkplug-B and use the same data model that Sparkplug-B has, but use it with JSON instead. And now humans can troubleshoot. And that's so important in a factory, because when something goes wrong, you need to be able to see what was in the message that caused the problem. And it's harder to do with the Google protocol buffers binary message back, the package, the payload is binary. So that's why our customers are not using Sparkplug-B. They use the JSON instead, but they use the same good things that are in Sparkplug. All those good design patterns that we definitely recommend.
Okay, thanks. What's the future of edge frameworks, and what's going to be their impact, especially on manufacturing? Will edge frameworks impact the business model or the operations, or what will they impact?
Okay, so when he says edge frameworks, maybe a little bit more clarification is needed. Does he mean like edge versus cloud, for example? Like can we actually do things that the cloud promises, for example, on the edge? If that is the question, then the answer is yes. A lot more and more providers out there are able to bring the cloud functionality on the edge, meaning like if I'm a manufacturer and if I have something against the cloud and I don't want to go to the cloud, we can actually have cloud-like functionality on the edge, for example, right? And we can bring in a lot of the solutions from an MQTT perspective. We can take the information, we can have a broker on premise, we can send it to another like edge system where things can be processed for like AI, ML, and other things that you want to do on the edge, much like what you want to do on the cloud. There are definitely benefits of the cloud, right? Obviously, you have infinite storage capacity and processing capacity that people can still take benefit of, like if you're willing to go to the cloud, but a lot of those functionalities are brought to the edge. So
Okay,
that would be my take.
thank you. What do you guys think about blockchain?
Blockchain is a slow technology. It's for peer-to-peer distributed, is almost serverless storing of data in blockchains so that you can verify the information. I think factories need a higher performance solution than blockchain so that you can store data more quickly. And so I think blockchain is an interesting thing, but I don't think it's critical for manufacturing. I think manufacturing needs timestamp data that can be inserted at high velocity into databases and through MQTT and other protocols to bring data. I think the challenge for manufacturing is integrating data, and I don't think blockchain helps very much with integrating data. So I don't really see blockchain. I think it's a hype, it's exciting, but I don't see its use cases for manufacturing that much.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've seen some examples across companies, and then I've also seen some examples within companies where it's not about speed, it's about security. So government documents, quality documents, a lot of things like that, where they're using blockchain, but it's not for speed or for calculation. It's for a different purpose.
Yeah, my answer would be the same thing, Rebecca. I wanted to say that, yes, for specific use cases within manufacturing, it can still be used, but they're very, very specialized use cases, not general, like Mike said.
Okay.
Yeah. And security is an important point because security means a lot of things to a lot of people. And for blockchain, if you want to have a secure historical record of what happened, that can't be altered, it's great. And if that's what you need, that's perfect. But there's security for transport layer security that occurs when you want to communicate from point B to point, from point A to B, transport layer security, TLS, or like, the browser HTTPS. That is a proven secure technology to ensure that messages go from A to B. You don't need to encrypt data on the machine and decrypt it on the broker or decrypt it on somewhere else. That's where MQTT makes that so much nicer.
Yes,
and then
absolutely.
And then on the database side, when you store data into a database, you want to encrypt data at rest. So you want to encrypt it on the line in transit, and then you encrypt it at rest and using the same technologies. And so like Percom Edge MQ can do both of those. And so then the third part of security is authentication. You need to be able to authenticate who is a machine and who's allowed to send certain messages to certain topics. And authentication, there's a lot of authentication techniques. And MQTT is very open in that way and allows you to use many different authentication techniques to validate the right machines are talking to the right software.
Right.
Okay.
There was a comment on blockchain. Actually, Joanne put it, multiple use cases for blockchain for supply chain. I think that's a good point. Supply chain for compliance reporting, for product engineering, and using edge computing and other cloud. So yes, definitely supply chain blockchain is going to be a huge advantage there.
Yeah, and this is a perfect case of you have to apply the right tool for the right problem.
Yes.
And blockchain, if you're trying to get data and make decisions quickly and automatically, rules-based decision-making in your factory, blockchain is not going to be the answer. But if you're for other things, blockchain may well be the best answer.
Right.
And that makes the job of the IT/OT geek profession so damn difficult because there's so much we have to understand. And that's where I think bringing in external expertise, and as all three of these guys have talked about, there's probably not one company you want to bring in to try to guide you through this whole thing.
Right.
One company will often want to do it, but do they have the expertise that you really need? So that's, part of the challenge is figuring out the right resource to help.
Absolutely. So we have system integrators, for example, Rebecca, in manufacturing, right, that specialize in bringing together different systems based on customer needs. Obviously, they'll bring in like different vendors into the picture, and they'll bring it together, if you will, ensuring that customers get the best experience.
Okay. Adrian, here's a question that I think is in your wheelhouse, but again, the wheelhouses are so complicated. I'm not even sure what my own is, you know, but is there a way to make MQTT or OCPUA, client server protocols, redundant for factories that don't have stable network conditions? To me, it seems like I'd want a stable network connection rather than try to make it redundant. But Adrian, can you help us?
Actually, I think the question is not for me, and probably I saw some other interesting questions there. You know,
Okay.
it's only about a specific technology. I think Ravi or Michael can answer also to this.
You know, that's what's
Okay.
neat about MQTT is it's designed for less reliable networks.
Right.
That's what it's originally designed to do. TCP/IP is very reliable, but even then, we have companies that use our product that go, we don't trust TCP/IP as reliable as it is. So they want that extra layer that MQTT provides, where you send a, what it does, MQTT sends a message and it requires acknowledgments to come back from the broker to say, yes, you got it. Right. And you can do multiple levels of quality of service and get more acknowledgments for more guarantees. Mm-hmm. And that extra layer of protection is important in manufacturing to ensure that if I sent a message to a piece of equipment, or sorry, I send a message to a topic, I know the broker got it. And then the broker sends that message to the subscribers, it knows they get it and it can guarantee delivery. So yeah, MQTT does add that extra layer of protection. OpenCUA is different. It is redundant, and OpenCUA is not a push technology. OpenCUA is a pull technology where you have to go pull the OpenCUA server. So you pull a piece of equipment on a periodic basis. Do you have this piece of information? Do you have this piece of information? You ask for it. And MQTT is much more efficient than, because it pushes data when you want to deliver it, as opposed to coming and getting it.
Yeah, and Mike, if I can just add that, I mean, it makes perfect sense. The only thing is OpenCUA, for example, on premise, there are a lot of systems that are hardwired, and I think OpenCUA provides the right experience for that to exchange information, if you will, right, in a standardized format. But absolutely, like I agreed with you, like if you want to take that information and put it on like the cloud or some other system, then MQTT is built for the reliability, unreliable networks.
Okay.
Right.
All right. And man, I wish we could go on for another hour because there are some great questions here. But we can't go on for another hour because there's already another fabulous hour planned. I'm going to ask each one of these guys the same question. What's the single most important point you want the audience to take away from this 55-minute conversation that we're having? If they only remember one thing, what should it be? Adrian, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, okay, I can start. So it's not about technology, it's about how you use it. Doesn't matter how the technology is called, it's just a technology. To make a comparison, you know, when you are building a house, you should focus on your house, on your goals, what it should look like, and how it fits your needs, you know. You are not focusing on the hammer you are using when building that house. That hammer can be replaced with whatever you want. It's not just like 20 years ago when you're having no options. Nowadays, there are alternatives for each technology and advocates for each technology. You know, you cannot say that something is bad, some technology is bad and some is good. All they are good and they are having pros and cons, you know. So my message is focus on your goals. Focus on what you want to achieve, not on a particular technology.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Ravi, what do you want people to remember?
Yes, I think piggybacking on what Adrian said, right? At the end of the day, technology is a means to an end, right? Really, you should be looking at what problems we are solving for customers. Now, we kind of like started off talking about like, what does that day-to-day look like from a factory perspective? What are they trying to achieve, right? I mean, are they, is there any macro factors that's affecting them? For example, COVID and other factors within that industry vertical that's affecting them that they want to kind of like take care of, right? I mean, is reliability a big problem for them? Is quality a big problem for them, or is our machines kind of like dying on them without like any notice, and they need to take care of it, and they're facing this downtime that's costing them millions of dollars. That is the way we approach it. And to be able to do that, what is the end goal there, right? And how can we, for example, help you get the data for you, right? Instead of talking about technology, that's how we approach it from a HiveMQ perspective. And I just wanted to reiterate that here. That technology is a means to an end. It's really the end goal that matters.
Yeah, and again, I find so many people can't envision the end goal because they don't know what's possible.
Yes.
We thought Bill Gates was crazy when he said a computer in every home. And now we have computers in our pockets and we have them everywhere because we didn't comprehend what was possible. And that's a similar challenge that companies have now. It's a challenge they haven't put together a roadmap because they can't figure out what the end can look like.
Right.
So
Right.
it's often we end up with bite-sized pieces because we can't see more than that. It's looking at the elephant one piece at a time, we can't see the whole elephant, but that's because we can't see the whole elephant. Mike, what would you like everybody to remember? One thing, they only remember one thing. What should it be?
I think that I agree that the end is important. And then the end to me is connectivity across all this variety of equipment. It's very hard to achieve. The internet did it by standardizing on one technology, TCP/IP and HTTPS over TCP/IP, and that's a communication protocol. The entire internet is based on HTTP and its secure version HTTPS. I believe the exact same thing is true for manufacturing. So even though technology is not the answer, it is the answer when your objective is to have standard communications across the wide variety of devices. The internet achieved it with a standard. Manufacturing can achieve that with a standard as well, and a non-proprietary standard like MQTT and JSON on top of MQTT. I believe that will change the entire world of manufacturing, just like the internet was changed by TCP/IP and HTTP.
Thank you, Mike. So critical technology decisions have to be made, and we need to make them with that connectivity in mind, even if we don't know what we're going to do with that connectivity right now. We need to keep that in mind. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this. And I thank you to the attendees for listening and for your great questions. And I wish I could get to all of them, but we just don't have time. And the speakers have just been fabulous. Thank you to each one of you. And all of today's sponsors we appreciate, but especially for this first session, to HiveMQ, K-Factory, and Faircom for sponsoring this panel conversation. It's through the support of all of the sponsors that IoT World can bring together and share this important, high-quality content for you, the audience. And again, as a reminder, it will all be available to you in a couple days on demand. Now it's time to move on to your next session, how to successfully scale your industrial IoT initiatives leveraging AI. The hits just keep on coming. So have a great day, and thank you to all of you.